The first rays of dawn painted the Miami skyline as Jason Blackwood lounged on the deck of his sleek yacht, his laughter mingling with the sound of gentle waves. Clad in designer shades and a linen shirt, Jason epitomized the carefree life of a privileged playboy. For him, life was a series of parties, casual romances, and indulgences, far removed from the responsibilities of his father's business empire. But that morning, his world tilted. Mr. Blackwood, Linda, his father's personal assistant, interrupted his reverie, her tone unusually formal. "You need to come home. Now." The words carried a weight that cut through Jason's usual nonchalance. Hours later, he stood in the grand yet somber halls of the Blackwood estate. His mother, Sarah, her poised demeanor masking her grief, greeted him with a tight embrace. "Jason, your father." Her voice cracked. "He's gone." The funeral was a blur of condolences and solemn faces. Jason, though outwardly composed, felt a tumult of guilt and disbelief. His father, William Blackwood, was a titan in the tourism industry, a man who had built an empire Jason had scarcely cared to understand. Now, the full weight of that legacy loomed before him. Days later, Jason sat in the mahogany-paneled office of George Sullivan, the family lawyer. Sarah sat beside him, her calm presence a stark contrast to Jason's restless energy. "Well," George began, his voice steady, "your father left behind a detailed will. As expected, you are the primary beneficiary of his holdings, including the Blue Paradise Resort." Jason exhaled, relief flooding him. He had feared some arcane condition might strip him of his inheritance, but George wasn't finished. "There is, however, a stipulation." Jason frowned. "A stipulation." George slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "Your father believed strongly in hard work and understanding the people who make this empire run. To that end, you must work undercover at Blue Paradise for 6 months." Jason scoffed. "Undercover? What does that even mean?" George's gaze didn't waver. "You will assume the identity of a janitor and rotate through every department of the resort. Your name, wealth, and position must remain a secret. Only a handful of trusted individuals will know your true identity." "Is this a joke?" Jason asked, his voice rising. "I'm not some character in a soap opera." "Jason," Sarah interjected, her hand on his arm, "this is your father's way of ensuring you're ready to carry his legacy. He trusted you. Don't let him down." Jason's resistance faltered under his mother's earnest gaze. He could almost hear his father's voice, urging him to rise to the challenge, to prove he was more than the spoiled son the world assumed him to be. Finally, Jason sighed, his reluctance giving way to resolve. "Fine," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "I'll do it." Jason's journey was set in motion. Ahead lay 6 months of hard labor, anonymity, and a world he had never truly seen before. But within the confines of Blue Paradise's pristine walls lurked not only the trials of his father's test, but also a darker truth that threatened to destroy everything William Blackwood had built. The sun was just beginning to rise over the Florida Keys when Jason Blackwood stepped off the ferry, his tailored suits and designer accessories left far behind. In their place was a simple duffel bag containing a few thrift store clothes and a pair of worn work boots that felt alien on his feet. His usually immaculate brown hair was now deliberately tousled, and his hazel eyes, so accustomed to attention, darted nervously as he approached the staff entrance of Blue Paradise Resort. For the first time in his life, Jason felt completely out of place. The grand facade of the resort, with its towering palm trees and pristine white walls, seemed to mock him. It was no longer his to command, but a world he had to infiltrate as Jack Miller. a janitor with no claim to fame or fortune. As he entered the service hallway, the shift in atmosphere was palpable. Gone were the opulent marble floors and crystal chandeliers of the main lobby. Here, beige walls and utilitarian decor reigned. The faint hum of machinery underscored the hurried footsteps and murmured conversations of employees beginning their shifts. Jason hesitated at the staff desk, where a stout woman with a clipboard and a no-nonsense expression looked up from her paperwork. "Name?" she asked, not bothering to glance up. "Jack," Jason said, the name tasting unfamiliar. "Jack Miller." The woman finally looked up, her sharp eyes appraising him. "Maintenance, huh? First day?" Jason nodded, his heart pounding. "Yeah." She handed him a uniform, a plain dark blue shirt with matching pants and a name tag that read Jack. "Locker rooms down the hall to your left. Get changed and meet Martin in the supply room. He's your supervisor." Jason took the uniform, mumbling his thanks, and made his way to the locker room. As he changed, he caught his reflection in the small, scratched mirror. The man staring back at him was a far cry from the Jason Blackwood, who once graced society pages. For a moment, he wondered if he was truly capable of pulling this off. But then he remembered his mother's words. "He trusted you." Martin, the head of maintenance, was a burly man in his 50s, with a thick mustache and a perpetual scowl. As Jason entered the supply room, Martin barely glanced at him. "You're the new guy," Martin grunted. "Hope you're ready to work. We don't tolerate slackers here." Jason nodded, doing his best to appear eager. "I'm ready." "Good." Martin handed him a mop and a bucket. "Bathrooms in the east wing. They're a mess. Get to it." Jason stared at the mop, a tool he had never so much as touched before. "Right," he muttered, gripping it awkwardly as he wheeled the bucket down the hallway. The first task was a humbling experience. Cleaning bathrooms, scrubbing toilets, and mopping floors left Jason sweaty, sore, and questioning his life choices. The smell alone was enough to make him gag, but he gritted his teeth and pushed through. By the time he finished, his arms ached, and his once spotless uniform was stained and damp. "Not bad for a rookie," Martin said gruffly when Jason reported back. "But don't get cocky. There's plenty more where that came from." It was during his lunch break, in the crowded staff cafeteria, that Jason first noticed Olivia Thompson. She was seated at a corner table, her dark hair tied back in a ponytail. Her face, focused on an accounting textbook, spread open before her. Around her, other employees laughed and chatted, but she seemed completely absorbed in her studies. Intrigued, Jason grabbed a sandwich and made his way to her table. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked. Olivia glanced up, her warm brown eyes meeting his. For a moment, Jason felt like she could see right through him. Then she smiled and nodded. "Sure." As he sat down, Jason struggled to think of something to say. "Studying accounting?" he finally ventured. Olivia nodded, flipping a page in her book. "Yeah, trying to finish my degree. This job helps pay for classes." "That's impressive," Jason said sincerely. "Balancing work and school can't be easy." "It's not," Olivia admitted, closing her book with a sigh. "But it's worth it. My dad ran a small shop, and I saw how much he struggled with finances. I want to help people like him someday." Jason found himself genuinely impressed. Olivia's determination and selflessness were a stark contrast to the superficiality of the world he'd left behind. "I admire that," he said. Olivia smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Thanks. So, Jack, what's your story?" Jason froze for a moment before recovering. "Not much to tell. Just needed a fresh start, I guess." Olivia studied him for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "Well, Welcome to Blue Paradise, Jack. It's not always paradise for us workers, but we make it work. Over the next few days, Jason learned just how grueling maintenance work could be. He scrubbed pool tiles, hauled heavy garbage bags, and climbed ladders to replace light bulbs in the scorching Florida sun. His hands, once soft and unblemished, were now calloused and sore. The muscles in his back ached in ways he didn't think possible. Yet, as challenging as the work was, Jason began to notice things he had never considered before. He saw the quiet pride the staff took in their jobs, the camaraderie among them, and the little acts of kindness they showed one another. It was a world far removed from the polished veneer of the resort's guest areas, but it was real. One evening, as Jason mopped the lobby floor, he overheard a conversation between Mark Thompson, the general manager, and a man in an expensive suit. They were speaking in hushed tones, but Jason caught fragments of their discussion, mentions of budget cuts, offshore accounts, and William's death changing things. The words sent a chill down Jason's spine. What were they talking about? And how did it connect to his father's vision for the resort? As the men walked away, Jason resolved to find out. But for now, he needed to focus on surviving his new life as Jack. The Florida sun blazed high in the sky as Jason, still Jack to everyone at Blue Paradise Resort, pushed a cleaning cart down a corridor in the East Wing. Sweat dripped down his brow as he adjusted his baseball cap, the physical demands of janitorial work leaving his muscles perpetually sore. But his mind was sharp, alert, and increasingly filled with questions. Jason couldn't shake the fragments of the conversation he'd overheard between Mark Thompson, the general manager, and the mysterious man in the suit. Words like offshore accounts and William's death played on repeat in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he felt certain that his father's sudden passing had set off a chain of events far darker than he initially suspected. As he worked, he kept his ears open, hoping to pick up more clues. His chance came late that afternoon, when he was assigned to clean the main conference room after a staff meeting. The large mahogany table was strewn with half-empty coffee cups and crumpled papers. As Jason collected the trash, a piece of paper caught his eye. A draft memo addressed to Mark from the resort's accounting department. The memo mentioned budget adjustments and anomalies in vendor payments. Jason quickly folded the paper and stuffed it into his pocket before anyone noticed. Later that evening, he read it in the dim light of his shared dorm room. While it was cryptic, the mention of anomalies confirmed his suspicions that something was amiss in the resort's financial dealings. The next morning, Jason spotted Olivia in the staff cafeteria, sitting at her usual table with a textbook open in front of her. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed from too many late nights balancing work and school. Still, she greeted him with a smile when he sat down across from her. "You look like you could use a coffee," Jason said, sliding his tray onto the table. "I could use about 3, Olivia admitted with a laugh. "The accounting department's books aren't the only ones I've been studying lately." Jason leaned in, lowering his voice. "What do you mean?" Olivia hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "It's probably nothing," she said quietly, "but I've been helping out with some of the financial records in my free time. There are these discrepancies, payments that don't match up, vendors I've never heard of. I flagged them for my supervisor, but he told me to focus on my other duties and let it go." Jason's pulse quickened. "What kind of discrepancies?" "Transfers to accounts listed under shell corporations," Olivia replied, her brow furrowing. "It's like someone's trying to move money out of the resort without anyone noticing." Jason nodded, pretending to focus on his sandwich while his mind raced. "You should be careful," he said finally. If something shady is going on, you don't want to get caught up in it. Olivia sighed, closing her textbook. I know, but if something illegal is happening, shouldn't we do something about it? Jason's admiration for Olivia grew as he saw her conviction, but he couldn't risk revealing his true identity. Not yet. Instead, he said, maybe we'll figure it out together. In the weeks that followed, Jason threw himself into his undercover role with renewed determination. Every interaction with the staff revealed more about the resort's inner workings and the people who kept it running. He watched as housekeepers cleaned room after room with meticulous care, despite the grueling hours. Maintenance workers like Martin ensured that every faucet flowed and every light bulb glowed, often staying late to finish tasks that went unnoticed by the resort's pampered guests. And then there was Olivia. Jason often found her working late in the staff lounge, poring over accounting books or scribbling notes in the margins of her textbooks. Her resilience and work ethic left Jason both humbled and inspired. She wasn't just working to pay for her education. She was driven by a desire to help others, a vision he'd never encountered in his privileged world. One evening, as Jason finished cleaning the staff cafeteria, he saw Mark Thompson speaking with the same mysterious man he'd encountered before. This time, the two were in the hallway outside the general manager's office. Jason ducked behind a corner, staying just out of sight, but close enough to hear snippets of their conversation. Can't afford any delays, the man said, his voice sharp and commanding. William's death changed everything, but we need to stay on schedule. I'm handling it, Mark replied, his tone strained. But the staff's starting to notice the changes. If they start asking questions, then make sure they don't, the man interrupted. This operation is too important to risk. Jason's heart pounded as the men parted ways. He waited a few moments before stepping out of his hiding spot. His mind raced with questions. What operation? And how far would Mark go to keep it hidden? The next day, Jason approached Emily Rodriguez, the head of personnel. She had worked closely with William and was known for her warm demeanor and strong moral compass. If anyone could shed light on what was happening, it was her. Emily, Jason said during a quiet moment in her office, can I ask you something? Emily looked up from her paperwork, her expression curious. Of course, Jack. What's on your mind? Jason hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I've noticed some things around the resort, things that don't add up, and I overheard a conversation about. Emily's expression hardened, and she held up a hand to stop him. Jack, you need to be very careful about what you say and who you say it to. Jason leaned forward. You know something, don't you, about what's going on here? Emily sighed, leaning back in her chair. William trusted me with a lot, Jack. And I trust you because you remind me of him. But if you're asking about Mark and his dealings, you're stepping into dangerous territory. Then help me, Jason pleaded. If there's something wrong here, something that could ruin everything William built, I have to know. After a long silence, Emily nodded. All right. But we'll need to tread carefully. Meet me tonight after the evening shift. That night, Jason met Emily in a secluded corner of the resort grounds. The moonlight cast long shadows over the palm trees as she handed him a folder filled with documents. William had started looking into some of these things before he passed, Emily explained. He didn't tell me everything, but I know he was worried about Mark's growing influence, and I know he suspected some of the resort's profits were being siphoned off. Jason flipped through the papers, his chest tightening, as he recognized the names of shell corporations and bank accounts linked to offshore holdings. It was worse than he thought. This resort isn't just a business, Emily said. It's William's legacy. If we don't protect it, Everything he worked for will be lost. Jason looked up, his resolve hardening. Then, we won't let that happen. Jason's suspicions were no longer just inklings. They were facts. Mark Thompson wasn't just a bad manager. He was the linchpin in a web of deceit and corruption. And Jason, along with Olivia and Emily, was determined to bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. The Florida sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the blue Paradise Resort. Jason, still known as Jack to the staff, sat on a low wall overlooking the beach, his cleaning supplies abandoned beside him. The waves rolled gently onto the shore, their rhythm calming the tension that had been building within him for weeks. He glanced at Olivia, who was seated beside him, her uniform slightly rumpled from a long shift. She was scribbling something into her notebook, the tip of her pen tapping rhythmically against the edge of the page. Jason marveled at her focus and determination. For someone juggling long hours as a waitress and intense study sessions for her accounting degree, she radiated an energy he found infectious. "You're always working," Jason said with a grin, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Olivia looked up, startled at first, before offering him a small smile. "And you're always watching. What's your excuse for slacking off?" Jason chuckled, appreciating her quick wit. "Just admiring someone who can multitask better than I ever could." Olivia rolled her eyes, but didn't hide the blush creeping into her cheeks. "If you spent less time joking around, maybe you'd figure out how to fix that broken ice machine without flooding the kitchen." Jason laughed, a genuine sound that felt foreign to him after weeks of tension. "Touché. But in my defense, no one warned me about how much water those things hold." As their banter settled into an easy rhythm, Olivia closed her notebook and leaned back, letting the ocean breeze ruffle her hair. "So, Jack," she began, her tone teasing but curious, "what brought you here? You don't exactly strike me as the maintenance type." Jason hesitated. He couldn't reveal his true identity, but he also didn't want to lie outright. "Let's just say, I needed a fresh start," he said carefully. "I wanted to see life from a different perspective." Olivia nodded, sensing there was more to his story, but choosing not to press. "I get that. This place has been my fresh start, too." Jason raised an eyebrow. "How so?" She sighed, her gaze drifting out to the horizon. "I grew up in a small town where opportunities were limited. My dad owned a little convenience store, and I helped him with the books when I was a teenager. That's where my love for accounting started. But things got tough after my mom passed. Dad struggled to keep the store running, and I realized I needed to find a way to help." Jason's chest tightened at the vulnerability in her voice. "So, you came here to work and study?" Olivia nodded. "It's not easy, but every late-night shift and every cup of bad coffee brings me closer to my goal. Someday, I want to help people like my dad, small business owners who don't have anyone to guide them." Jason felt a pang of guilt. He had spent most of his life avoiding responsibility, yet here was someone who embraced it wholeheartedly. "That's incredible, Olivia. Really?" She smiled, her cheeks dimpling slightly. "Thanks. What about you? What's your big dream?" Jason hesitated again, caught off guard by the question. For so long, he had drifted through life without a clear purpose. But now, after weeks at the resort, something was beginning to shift. "I guess I'm still figuring that out." Jason's days at the resort continued with a mix of challenges and discoveries. Each morning began with tasks that ranged from scrubbing pool tiles to replacing broken light fixtures. At first, the physical labor felt grueling, but he soon realized there was a quiet satisfaction in completing these seemingly mundane tasks. He also began to see the staff in a new light. Martin, the gruff maintenance supervisor, was not just a taskmaster, but a mentor who took pride in teaching Jason the ropes. Maria, a housekeeper in her 50s, shared stories about the resort's early days while expertly folding towels into intricate shapes. Each person Jason interacted with had a story, a reason for being at Blue Paradise, and a role in keeping the resort running smoothly. Jason's newfound respect for the staff deepened his sense of responsibility. The resort was more than just a luxury getaway for tourists. It was a livelihood for hundreds of employees, many of whom depended on their jobs to support their families. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Jason began to notice growing dissatisfaction among the staff, particularly with Mark Thompson's management style. Rumors of pay cuts and unreasonable demands circulated in hushed conversations during breaks. Jason even overheard Maria complaining about how the cleaning supplies budget had been slashed, forcing the housekeepers to stretch their resources thin. "I don't understand," she said to a coworker one afternoon, as Jason quietly mopped a nearby hallway. "Mr. Blackwood would never have let this happen. He cared about us." Jason's chest tightened at the mention of his father. He wanted to reassure Maria, to promise that things would get better, but he knew he couldn't blow his cover. Instead, he made a mental note to address these issues once he could reclaim his position. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Jason found himself in the staff lounge, nursing a sore back. Olivia entered, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She placed one in front of him with a grin. "Thought you could use this." Jason smiled, touched by the gesture. "You're a lifesaver." "Don't mention it," Olivia said, sitting beside him. "Besides, I figured you deserved it after dealing with those clogged pool drains all morning." They sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping their coffee. Jason felt a warmth spreading through him, and it wasn't just from the drink. In Olivia, he had found someone who saw him for who he was, or at least who he was trying to become. That night, Jason stood on the balcony of the staff dormitory, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the resort. The sound of waves crashing against the shore filled the air, mingling with the distant laughter of guests. He thought about everything he had learned over the past few weeks, the hard work, the dedication, the quiet sacrifices of the people around him. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose stirring within him. Blue Paradise wasn't just a resort. It was a community, a legacy, and if he was going to inherit it, he needed to be worthy of it. "I'll figure this out," Jason whispered to himself. "For my father. For everyone." Jason's journey of transformation was only beginning, but he was no longer alone. With Olivia's friendship and the support of the staff, he was starting to see a path forward, a path that would require courage, resilience, and a willingness to fight for what truly mattered. The air in the Blue Paradise Resort carried a subtle tension, a stark contrast to the idyllic views and the luxurious amenities that defined the property. Jason, still operating under his alias Jack, was beginning to understand why. The cracks in the resort's polished facade were growing, and at the center of it all was Mark Thompson, the general manager. Jason had learned to move quietly, blending in with the staff as he went about his duties. It was during one of these routine days that he stumbled upon his first significant clue. He had been tasked with fixing a jammed lock on the door of Mark's office. As he worked, Mark's voice drifted through the partially open door, engaged in a tense phone call. "Yes, the transfers are complete," Mark said, his tone curt. "But we need to ensure there are no discrepancies. If the board gets wind of this, it's over." Jason froze, his hands still on the tools. Transfers? Discrepancies? His mind raced as he pieced together fragments of what he was hearing. "Just make sure everything looks clean on paper," Mark continued. and keep the investors happy. We can't afford another misstep." Jason's heart pounded in his chest. Mark wasn't just mismanaging the resort. He was hiding something far more sinister. That evening, Jason sought out Olivia in the staff cafeteria. She was seated at her usual table, surrounded by accounting books. The sight of her focused expression brought him a sense of calm, but he couldn't afford to delay. "Olivia," he said, sitting across from her, "can we talk?" Olivia looked up, sensing the urgency in his tone. "Of course. What's going on?" Jason lowered his voice. "I think Mark is involved in something illegal. I overheard him talking about transfers and covering up discrepancies." Olivia frowned, her mind immediately shifting into analytical mode. "That's not surprising. I've noticed some strange patterns in the financial records I've been studying." Jason leaned forward. "What kind of patterns?" "Unexplained expenses, inflated invoices, money being moved to accounts that don't align with the resort's operations," Olivia explained. "At first, I thought it might be a mistake, but now, I'm not so sure." Jason's jaw tightened. "We need to dig deeper." The opportunity came a few nights later, when Jason found himself alone in the administrative wing. Mark had left for a late dinner meeting, and the office was empty. Jason knew it was risky, but he couldn't ignore the chance to search for evidence. Using the maintenance master key, he entered Mark's office. The room was immaculate, its sleek, modern design exuding authority. Jason's eyes scanned the space, looking for anything out of place. He opened a drawer and found a locked file box. After a moment of hesitation, he used his multi-tool to pick the lock. Inside were folders marked with cryptic labels, special accounts, vendor agreements, and confidential investments. Jason's hands trembled as he opened the folders. The contents were damning: documents outlining fund diversions, offshore accounts, and contracts with unusually high payouts to certain vendors. He quickly took photos of the most incriminating pages with his phone. Just as he was about to close the drawer, he heard footsteps echoing in the hallway. Panic surged through him. He replaced the files, locked the drawer, and exited the office through a side door, his heart racing. The next morning, Jason's anxiety was palpable as he worked. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. His fears were confirmed when Mark approached him near the pool. "Jack," Mark said, his tone sharp. "A word." Jason nodded, maintaining his facade of calm. "Of course, Mr. Thompson." Mark led him to a secluded area behind the maintenance shed. "I've noticed you've been curious lately," Mark began, his eyes narrowing. "You're a janitor, not an investigator. Stay in your lane." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. "I'm just trying to do my job, sir." Mark stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Good. Because if I catch you poking around where you don't belong, there will be consequences." Jason held Mark's gaze, refusing to back down. "Understood." That night, Jason met Olivia in the quiet corner of the staff dormitory they had started using as their meeting spot. He showed her the photos he had taken. "This is serious," Olivia said, her voice trembling as she examined the evidence. "This isn't just mismanagement. It's criminal." Jason nodded. "And it's putting the resort and everyone who works here at risk." "What do we do?" Olivia asked, looking at him with a mixture of fear and determination. Jason's expression hardened. "We keep digging. If Mark is willing to threaten me, it means he's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes." As the days passed, Jason and Olivia worked in secret, piecing together more evidence of Mark's corruption. They began to notice patterns: money being funneled to offshore accounts, kickbacks disguised as consulting fees, and contracts with shell companies. But their investigation didn't go unnoticed. Mark's behavior became increasingly erratic. He started micromanaging staff, holding sudden inspections, and showing up in unexpected places. The atmosphere at the resort grew tense, with employees whispering about the general manager's unpredictable moods. Despite the risks, Jason and Olivia found solace in each other. Their partnership deepened, not just in their shared mission, but in the quiet moments they stole during breaks. Jason found himself opening up to Olivia in ways he never had with anyone else, and she, in turn, shared her hopes and fears with him. One evening, Jason returned to his dormitory to find an envelope slipped under his door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message: "Stop asking questions. You don't know who you're dealing with." Jason felt a surge of anger. This wasn't just about protecting his father's legacy anymore. It was about standing up to the corruption that threatened everything his family had built. He showed the note to Olivia, who looked equally determined. "This only proves we're on the right track," she said. "We can't stop now." Jason nodded. "Agreed. But we need to be careful. Whoever sent this isn't bluffing." As Jason lay awake that night, he reflected on how far he had come. When he arrived at Blue Paradise, he had been a directionless playboy, content to drift through life without a purpose. Now, he felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just for the resort, but for the people who depended on it. He resolved to see this through, no matter the cost. For his father, for Olivia, and for everyone who had made Blue Paradise what it was. The shadows of deceit were closing in, but Jason was ready to fight back. The tension at Blue Paradise Resort had reached a boiling point. Jason Blackwood, still disguised as Jack, felt the weight of his discoveries pressing heavily on his shoulders. The secrets he had uncovered weren't just anomalies. They were proof of a festering rot within the resort's management. He knew he couldn't do this alone anymore. It was time to bring someone else into his confidence. That someone was Emily Rodriguez, the head of personnel. Jason had observed her for weeks, noting her quiet efficiency and the respect she commanded among the staff. She had been one of his father's most trusted employees, and Jason believed she might hold the key to understanding the deeper layers of corruption. Jason approached Emily one evening. After her shift, she was sitting in her modest office, reviewing paperwork. The soft glow of the desk lamp illuminated her face, highlighting the tired lines etched from years of dedicated service. "Emily," Jason began hesitantly, closing the door behind him. "I need to talk to you about something important." Emily looked up, her brow furrowed in concern. "What is it, Jack?" Jason hesitated for a moment before taking a deep breath. "My name isn't Jack. I'm Jason Blackwood, William's son." Emily's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment she seemed unable to speak. Finally, she said, "Jason, your father always spoke so highly of you, but I never expected to meet you like this." Jason nodded. "I didn't expect to be here like this either. But I've uncovered something serious, and I need your help." He proceeded to explain everything: the will, the condition to work undercover, and the evidence he and Olivia had found. Emily listened intently, her expression shifting from surprise to understanding, and finally to a grim determination. "I suspected something was wrong," she admitted. "Mark has been making questionable decisions for months, but I didn't have proof. Your father always trusted me to protect this place, and I failed to see how deep the corruption ran." Jason placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You didn't fail, Emily. This was hidden well. But now that we know, we need to act." Emily agreed to help Jason and Olivia in their investigation. Her position gave her access to personnel records, payroll data, and internal communications, resources that could provide the missing pieces of the puzzle. The trio began working together in secret, meeting late at night in Emily's office. They pored over documents, cross-referenced transactions, and compiled a growing list of suspicious activities. Each discovery brought them closer to the truth, but it also heightened the risks. One night, Emily revealed a critical piece of information. "Your father left something for you, Jason," she said, pulling out a sealed envelope from a locked drawer. "He told me to give it to you if things ever went wrong." Jason opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter from his father, outlining a contingency plan. William had suspected that certain individuals might try to exploit the resort for their gain, and he had left detailed instructions on how to confront and dismantle the corruption. "This changes everything," Jason said, his voice filled with a new resolve. "We're going to take them down." As Jason, Olivia, and Emily delved deeper, they became increasingly aware of Mark's paranoia. He began to question employees about their activities, hold sudden inspections, and even scrutinize the janitorial staff, Jason included. One afternoon, Mark cornered Jason in a supply room. "You've been acting strange lately, Jack," he said, his eyes narrowing. "You're not here to stir up trouble, are you?" Jason met his gaze evenly, suppressing the urge to confront him outright. "I'm just doing my job, sir. Is there something I should know?" Mark's lips curled into a thin smile. "Good. Keep it that way." Jason knew Mark's suspicion was dangerous, but it also confirmed they were on the right track. He relayed the encounter to Olivia and Emily that evening. "We need to move quickly," Olivia said, her voice tinged with urgency. "Mark's becoming desperate, and desperate people make mistakes." During their investigation, Emily uncovered an unexpected ally. Robert Davis, the resort's head accountant. Robert was a nervous, unassuming man, but he had a keen eye for numbers. When Emily discreetly approached him, he admitted that he had noticed discrepancies in the accounts, but had been too afraid to speak up. "I didn't know who to trust," Robert confessed, wringing his hands. "Mark has connections, powerful connections, but if you're willing to expose him, I'll help." Jason welcomed Robert into their circle, appreciating his detailed knowledge of the resort's financial operations. With Robert's help, they began tracing the flow of money through shell companies and offshore accounts, building an irrefutable case. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Jason couldn't help but feel the weight of his father's legacy pressing down on him. He often found himself standing on the balcony of the staff dormitory, looking out over the resort and reflecting on how much it had changed him. One night, Olivia joined him. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, Jason," she said softly. "Your father would be proud." Jason turned to her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I couldn't do this without you, Olivia. You've given me strength when I needed it most." Their bond had grown stronger with each passing day, and in that moment, Jason realized just how much Olivia meant to him. But there was no time to dwell on emotions. They had a battle to fight. Just as their investigation reached its peak, Jason received another chilling message. A typed note was left on his pillow reading, "Stop now or face the consequences." Jason showed the note to Olivia and Emily, his resolve hardening. "This only proves we're getting closer," he said. "They're scared, and they should be." Emily nodded. "But we need to be careful. If they're willing to leave threats, they're capable of much worse." With the evidence in hand and allies by his side, Jason began preparing for the inevitable confrontation. He knew the stakes were high, but he also knew that exposing the corruption was the only way to save Blue Paradise. As the night deepened, the trio sat around Emily's desk, finalizing their plan. They knew the road ahead would be treacherous, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay in their path. "We're not just fighting for the resort," Jason said, his voice filled with determination. "We're fighting for everyone who believes in what my father built." The shadows that had loomed over Blue Paradise were beginning to lift, but the fight was far from over. Jason Blackwood felt a strange mixture of anticipation and anxiety as he moved through the corridors of Blue Paradise Resort. With each passing day, the stakes grew higher. The evidence he, Olivia, and Emily had gathered was damning, yet they were still missing one critical piece, undeniable proof that could expose Mark Thompson and his shadowy collaborators. Jason had grown accustomed to his janitorial disguise, blending in seamlessly with the staff. But every interaction, every glance from Mark, carried an undercurrent of suspicion. He knew time was running out, and every moment they delayed brought new risks. Olivia and Robert Davis, the resort's accountant, spent countless late nights in the accounting office. With Robert's insider knowledge, they managed to trace suspicious financial transactions to offshore accounts and shell companies. "This is it," Olivia whispered one night, her finger hovering over a ledger entry on the computer screen. "This account, look at the flow of funds. It's going to an entity that doesn't exist." Robert nodded, his nervous energy palpable. "It's been happening for years. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. It's like they got bolder over time." Olivia glanced at Jason, who was reviewing the documents from the corner of the room. "We need to connect this to Mark," she said. "It's the only way to take him down." Jason's eyes narrowed. "He's careful, but no one can hide forever. If we keep digging, we'll find the link." Their covert operations almost came undone when Mark unexpectedly entered the accounting office during one of their late-night sessions. Jason and Olivia had just finished photographing documents when they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. "Quick, hide!" Jason hissed, shoving Olivia toward a closet while he ducked behind a desk. Robert, too panicked to move, froze in his chair. The door swung open, and Mark strode in, his sharp gaze sweeping the room. "What are you doing here so late, Robert?" he asked, his tone dripping with suspicion. Robert stammered, I was just finishing up some reports." Mark's eyes narrowed as he scanned the desk. "Reports, huh? Seems like a lot of activity for just one person." Jason's heart pounded as he crouched behind the desk, gripping the edge of a folder. He watched Mark move closer to Robert, his posture tense. "You've been acting strange lately," Mark said, leaning in. "If you're hiding something, now's the time to confess." "I'm not hiding anything," Robert said, his voice shaking. Before Mark could press further, a sudden commotion outside the office drew his attention. A loud crash echoed through the hallway, followed by raised voices. Mark straightened and turned toward the door. "Stay here," he barked before storming out. As soon as he was gone, Jason and Olivia emerged from their hiding spots. "That was too close," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason nodded, his jaw clenched. "We need to be more careful. He's on to us." Mark's behavior became increasingly erratic in the days that followed. He held impromptu staff meetings, ordered random searches, and even placed additional surveillance cameras in key areas of the resort. Jason noticed Mark's newfound habit of carrying a briefcase wherever he went. It seemed to hold something important, and Jason suspected it might contain critical documents. "We need to get a look inside that briefcase," Jason said during one of their secret meetings with Emily and Olivia. Emily frowned. "That's a huge risk, Jason. If you're caught, it could blow everything." "I'll be careful," Jason assured her. "But if that briefcase holds what I think it does, it could be the evidence we need." Amid the chaos, Jason and Olivia found moments of solace in each other's company. Their late-night talks shifted from strategy sessions to heartfelt conversations about their hopes, fears, and dreams. One evening, as they sat on a secluded stretch of beach, Olivia confessed, "I never thought I'd be involved in something like this. My life has always been about numbers and equations, not conspiracies." Jason chuckled softly. "I never thought I'd be a janitor," he admitted. "But here we are." Olivia turned to him, her expression serious. "You've changed, Jason. You're not the same man who walked into this resort months ago." Jason met her gaze, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "That's because of you, Olivia. You've shown me what it means to fight for something bigger than myself." Their connection deepened as they leaned into each other, finding comfort in the uncertain storm they faced. Jason's plan to access Mark's briefcase unfolded during a busy evening when the resort was hosting a private event. The increased activity provided the perfect cover for Jason to slip into Mark's office. With Olivia stationed outside as a lookout, Jason used a set of master keys he had acquired to enter the office. The briefcase sat on Mark's desk, its locks glinting under the overhead light. Jason worked quickly, using a small tool to pick the locks. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he focused, the sound of his own breathing filling the room. Finally, the lock clicked open. Inside, he found a treasure trove of incriminating documents, forged contracts, correspondence with shadowy figures, and a detailed ledger of illegal transactions. Jason photographed everything before carefully locking the briefcase again. Just as he finished, Olivia knocked softly on the door. "Jason, someone's coming. We need to go." Jason slipped out of the office with seconds to spare, his heart pounding as he and Olivia retreated to safety. With the new evidence in hand, Jason and his team felt the tide begin to turn. They compiled a comprehensive dossier of Mark's activities, cross-referencing every piece of information to ensure it was airtight. But their success came with a price. Mark's paranoia reached a fever pitch, and his actions became more aggressive. He fired 2 employees without cause and began openly accusing others of disloyalty. "He's cracking," Emily said during one of their meetings. "If we don't act soon, he might do something desperate." Jason nodded. "It's time to confront him. But we need to be smart about it. This isn't just about saving the resort. It's about protecting everyone who depends on it." As the chapter closed, Jason stood on the precipice of a high-stakes confrontation. The evidence they had gathered was enough to bring Mark down, but the risks were greater than ever. Jason knew the coming days would determine not only the fate of Blue Paradise, but also the safety of everyone involved. With Olivia and Emily by his side, he prepared to take the next step in their dangerous game. The days at Blue Paradise grew more intense, each moment teetering on the edge of discovery and disaster. Amidst the mounting tension, Jason and Olivia found themselves drawing closer, their shared mission creating a bond neither could deny. One evening, after another exhausting day of gathering evidence and evading Mark's watchful eye, Jason invited Olivia to the resort's secluded southern beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, and the waves crashed softly against the shore, a brief respite from the storm that brewed within the resort. "Thank you for coming," Jason said, his voice low but steady, as he gestured for Olivia to sit beside him on a driftwood log. Olivia tilted her head, studying him. "You've been quieter than usual. What's on your mind?" Jason hesitated before responding, staring out at the horizon. "I've been thinking about what all this means. My father's legacy, this resort, everything we've been fighting for, and what you've come to mean to me." His last words lingered in the air, their weight unmistakable. Olivia's breath caught, but she said nothing, waiting for him to continue. I was so selfish before, Jason admitted, his voice tinged with regret. All I cared about was myself, parties, travel, easy living. But working here, seeing what this place means to people like you, Emily, and even the staff who've put up with Mark, it's changed me. Olivia reached out, placing a hand on his arm. You've grown, Jason. You're not the same man who arrived here pretending to be a janitor. You're someone who cares, someone who's willing to fight for what's right. Jason turned to her, his hazel eyes glistening with sincerity. And you've been a big part of that. You've shown me what it means to work hard, to care about something bigger than yourself. Olivia, I care about you. The words hung between them, and for a moment, Olivia was too stunned to respond. She had sensed their growing connection, but hearing it spoken aloud stirred emotions she hadn't let herself fully acknowledge. I care about you too, Jason, she finally said, her voice soft but steady. But this is dangerous, for both of us. If Mark finds out. Jason interrupted her, shaking his head. I don't care. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Their shared confessions seemed to lift the weight of secrecy and fear, if only for a moment. The tension of their mission melted away as they sat together, shoulders touching, watching the last rays of sunlight dip below the horizon. Jason turned to Olivia, his voice barely above a whisper. Can I kiss you? A small smile tugged at her lips as she nodded. I thought you'd never ask. The kiss was gentle, a meeting of two souls finding solace in the midst of chaos. For that brief moment, the outside world, the looming threats, the web of corruption, ceased to exist. The next day, Jason and Olivia returned to their respective roles, fully aware that their deepening connection made their mission even riskier. As Jason mopped the floors in the lobby, he noticed Mark's sharp eyes, scanning the room. His expression was more calculating than usual, and Jason couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was onto them. Later that afternoon, while Olivia delivered drinks to guests by the pool, she felt a shadow fall over her. Looking up, she found Mark towering over her, his face a mask of polite interest. Miss Thompson, he said smoothly, I've noticed you've been spending quite a bit of time with our janitor, Jack. Care to explain? Olivia's heart pounded, but she maintained her composure. We're just friends. Jack's new, and I've been showing him around. Why? Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, his smile not reaching his eyes. I hope you're not getting too friendly. You wouldn't want to get distracted from your duties. Olivia forced a polite smile. Of course not, Mr. Thompson. My work always comes first. As Mark walked away, Olivia exhaled shakily. She hurried to find Jason, her instincts screaming that their time was running out. In the staff break room, Olivia recounted her interaction with Mark. He's suspicious, Jason. We need to be more careful. Jason nodded, his jaw tight with determination. We've come too far to back down now. But you're right. We need to change our approach. Emily joined them, her expression serious. Mark's paranoia is growing. He's watching everyone closely, especially you two. If we're not careful, he'll figure out what we're doing. Jason leaned forward, his voice low but resolute. Then we use his paranoia against him. If we make him think the threat is coming from somewhere else, we can buy ourselves more time. The trio devised a decoy plan to distract Mark while continuing their investigation. Emily planted rumors among the staff, subtly implying that the resort's investors were unhappy with Mark's performance. At the same time, Jason and Olivia orchestrated minor disruptions around the resort, malfunctioning equipment, misplaced files, and subtle sabotage. that added to Mark's stress. The plan worked. Mark became increasingly agitated, lashing out at staff and doubling his security measures. But his attention shifted away from Jason and Olivia, giving them the freedom to dig deeper. Despite the escalating danger, Jason and Olivia's relationship flourished. They found stolen moments to be together, a shared cup of coffee in the staff cafeteria, a quiet walk along the resort's trails, or a whispered conversation in the dimly lit storage room. One evening, after a particularly tense day, Jason found Olivia sitting alone on the beach, her knees drawn to her chest as she stared out at the waves. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She looked up, her expression softening as she nodded. "I could use the company." Jason sat beside her, their shoulders brushing. "I know this is hard, but we're going to get through it. Together." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, finding comfort in his steady presence. "I believe you, Jason. I just hope we're not too late." Jason woke early, the morning air heavy with tension. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of subterfuge and discovery, but the growing suspicion from Mark Thompson loomed like a storm cloud. As he slipped into his janitor's uniform, the weight of maintaining his false identity felt heavier than ever. During breakfast in the staff cafeteria, Jason noticed Mark sitting at a corner table, his sharp eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Jason's every movement felt scrutinized, and he avoided eye contact, focusing instead on his plate of eggs and toast. Olivia joined him a moment later, her demeanor calm, but her eyes betraying unease. "He's watching you," she whispered, leaning close enough that her words wouldn't carry beyond their table. Jason nodded subtly. "I know. He's been watching everyone, but I think he's especially focused on me. We need to tread carefully." Their hushed conversation was interrupted when Mark stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He walked toward them, his presence commanding attention. Jason's heart raced as Mark stopped at their table, his piercing gaze fixed on him. "Jack," Mark said with forced politeness, "a word in my office, please." Jason forced a neutral expression, nodding. Of course, Mr. Thompson Mark's office was a stark contrast to the rest of the resort, sleek, modern, and meticulously organized. Jason stood in the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, as Mark closed the door and leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "You've been here a while now," Mark began, his tone deceptively casual. "How are you finding the work?" Jason maintained his composure. "It's been a learning experience, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity." Mark's lips twitched into a thin smile, but his eyes remained cold. "You've been very inquisitive, asking questions, talking to people. I find that interesting." Jason's pulse quickened, but he kept his voice steady. "I've just been trying to learn, sir. Understand the operations and how everything works. Is there a problem?" Mark stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Let me be clear, Jack. Curiosity can be dangerous in a place like this. Stay in your lane, and we won't have any problems." Jason met his gaze, refusing to show fear. "Understood, sir." Mark studied him for a moment longer, before nodding dismissively. "Good. You can go." Jason left the office, his heart pounding. Mark's warning was clear. He was under scrutiny, and any misstep could expose not just his investigation, but his true identity. Meanwhile, Olivia delved deeper into the resort's financial records, taking advantage of a rare quiet afternoon in the accounting office. Her hands trembled as she flipped through ledgers and spreadsheets, her eyes scanning for discrepancies. Finally, she found it, a series of suspicious transactions tied to an offshore account. Her stomach churned as she realized the scope of the corruption. The amounts being siphoned off were staggering, enough to cripple the resort if left unchecked. She quickly photographed the documents with her phone, her mind racing with thoughts of how to share this with Jason without alerting Mark. Just as she was about to leave, the office door creaked open. Olivia froze, her heart hammering in her chest. It was Robert, the resort's head accountant, his expression wary. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. Thinking quickly, Olivia held up a ledger. "I was double-checking some figures for a report. It didn't seem to add up." Robert's eyes narrowed, but he didn't press further. "Be careful," he said cryptically, before walking away, leaving Olivia to wonder if he was an ally or another enemy. That evening, Jason and Olivia met in the staff break room, under the guise of a casual conversation. Olivia slid into the seat across from Jason, her expression tense but composed. "I found something," she said quietly, sliding her phone across the table. Jason glanced at the photos she had taken, his jaw tightening as he absorbed the details. "This is big," he murmured. "If we can tie this to Mark, it could be the evidence we need." Olivia nodded. "But we need to be careful. Robert caught me in the office earlier. I don't know if he suspects anything, but we can't take chances." Before they could discuss further, Mark entered the break room. Jason quickly pocketed Olivia's phone, and they shifted the conversation to mundane topics. Mark's gaze lingered on them for a moment before he moved on, but the tension in the room was palpable. Over the next few days, Jason and Olivia intensified their efforts, but Mark's paranoia grew in tandem. He increased security, installed new surveillance cameras, and began interrogating staff members about their activities. Jason knew it was only a matter of time before Mark made a move. One evening, Jason returned to his dormitory to find his belongings rifled through. His stomach sank as he realized Mark must have ordered the search. Thankfully, Jason had been careful to keep incriminating evidence elsewhere, but the invasion of privacy was a stark reminder of the danger they faced. Despite the risks, Jason remained determined. One night, he stood on the beach, staring out at the waves as the moonlight danced across the water. Olivia joined him, her presence a comforting anchor in the chaos. "We're running out of time," she said softly. "Mark is getting closer to uncovering us." Jason nodded, his expression resolute. "Then, it's time to take the next step. I need to reveal who I am and confront him directly." Olivia's eyes widened. "Jason, that's too dangerous. If he knows who you are, he already suspects." Jason interrupted. "This way, I can control the narrative. If I wait, we lose that advantage." Olivia hesitated, then reached for his hand. "If you're going to do this, you're not doing it alone." Jason squeezed her hand, gratitude and determination shining in his eyes. Together then, the sun had barely risen when Jason, now resolute, gathered his thoughts in the solitude of the staff dormitory. The events of the past weeks had culminated in this moment, a decision to unveil his true identity and confront Mark Thompson. But it wasn't just about exposing himself. It was about reclaiming his father's legacy and ensuring the survival of Blue Paradise. Jason glanced at his reflection in the cracked mirror above his sink. Gone was the carefree playboy who had once shunned responsibility. In his place stood a man shaped by labor, sacrifice, and a newfound respect for the world his father had built. "I'm ready," he murmured, as if to convince himself. Jason's first step was to gather the people he trusted. He approached Emily Rodriguez, the head of personnel, early that morning in her modest office. Emily's eyes widened in shock as Jason shut the door behind him and removed his janitor's cap. "Jason," she whispered, glancing around as though the walls had ears. "Yes," he confirmed, his voice steady. "Emily, I need your help." She motioned for him to sit, her expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "I had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything." "What's going on?" Jason explained everything. The stipulations of his father's will, the evidence of corruption he and Olivia had uncovered, and his plan to reveal his identity, to confront Mark. Emily's face grew paler with each word. "This is dangerous, Jason. Mark isn't just a businessman. He's a survivor. He'll do anything to protect himself." "I know," Jason replied, "but I can't let him destroy what my father worked so hard to build. Will you stand with me?" Emily studied him for a long moment, before nodding. "I owe your father everything, and I believe in you, Jason. Let's do this." Jason and Emily spent the next several hours strategizing. Emily suggested rallying key staff members, those who had remained loyal to the resort, despite Mark's growing tyranny. By midday, Jason and Emily had enlisted a small but determined group, including Olivia, who had been waiting anxiously for Jason's plan to unfold. Together, they finalized their evidence, documents Olivia had uncovered, photographs of suspicious transactions, and testimonies from staff who had witnessed Mark's unethical practices. "We need to strike quickly," Jason said, spreading the evidence across a table in Emily's office. "If we wait, Mark might destroy critical documents or call in reinforcements." Olivia placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "We're with you, Jason, no matter what happens." As the sun set over the Florida Keys, Jason donned a sharp suit, the first time he had worn anything other than his janitor's uniform in months. The tailored fabric felt both foreign and familiar, a reminder of the man he used to be and the leader he had become. The plan was simple, but risky. Confront Mark in the presence of his associates and present the evidence. The key was timing, ensuring the authorities, whom Olivia had secretly contacted, would arrive at the right moment. Emily arranged for the meeting to take place in the resort's presidential suite, under the guise of a routine staff update. Jason, Emily, Olivia, and a few trusted staff members arrived early, preparing the room for what would be a pivotal confrontation. Mark entered the suite with his usual air of authority, flanked by two of his most loyal subordinates. His eyes narrowed as he saw Jason standing at the head of the table, his posture confident and unyielding. "Ah, Jack," Mark sneered. "What's this charade about?" Jason straightened, meeting Mark's gaze head-on. "My name isn't Jack. It's Jason Blackwood, William Blackwood's son, and the rightful owner of Blue Paradise." For a moment the room was silent, the weight of Jason's words hanging heavily in the air. Then Mark laughed, a cold, derisive sound. "Clever," Mark said, clapping slowly. "But do you really think a name will change anything? You're out of your depth, boy." Jason held up a folder filled with damning evidence. "This says otherwise. We've uncovered everything: offshore accounts, falsified invoices, bribes. It's over, Mark." Mark's expression darkened, his composed facade cracking. "You don't know who you're messing with," he hissed, stepping closer. "You think this little stunt will stop me? You're nothing but a spoiled brat playing hero." Before Mark could say more, the sound of heavy footsteps filled the hallway. The door burst open, and police officers entered, their presence commanding and unyielding. "Mark Thompson," one officer announced, "you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy." The color drained from Mark's face as he realized the gravity of the situation. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice tinged with desperation. "I built this place. Stop," Jason interrupted, his voice firm. "You didn't build anything, Mark. My father did. And now, It's my turn to protect it. As the officers cuffed Mark and led him away, Jason felt a wave of relief and vindication. The storm that had loomed over Blue Paradise was finally breaking. With Mark's arrest, Jason turned to Olivia and Emily, both of whom looked equally relieved and exhausted. The rest of the staff began filtering in, their expressions a mix of confusion and hope. Jason addressed them, his voice steady and sincere. I know this has been a difficult time for all of you, but I promise you this. Blue Paradise will rise again. My father's dream was to create a place of joy, opportunity, and integrity, and that's exactly what we'll do. The staff erupted into applause, their faith in Jason solidified by his actions. That night, as Jason stood on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore, Olivia joined him. She leaned against his shoulder, her presence a comforting anchor. You did it, she said softly. No, Jason replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Weggy did it. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, Jason felt a sense of peace. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. Now they could focus on rebuilding, not just the resort, but the legacy his father had entrusted to him. The tension in the presidential suite was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jason stood tall, his gaze unwavering, as Mark Thompson was led away in handcuffs. The fallout from the confrontation was just beginning, but Jason knew this was only the start of the battle to reclaim Blue Paradise and honor his father's vision. As the police officers escorted Mark and his associates out, Jason turned to face the stunned staff members who had gathered just outside the suite. The expressions ranged from shock to cautious hope, their trust in leadership shaken by the revelations of corruption. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Everyone, please return to your duties. Mr. Blackwood and I will address the staff at a meeting tomorrow morning. We'll explain everything. The murmurs grew louder as staff exchanged nervous glances, but one by one, they began to disperse. Jason caught Olivia's eye, her presence a calming force in the chaos. She gave him a small nod of reassurance, silently communicating her unwavering support. Once the suite was cleared, Jason, Emily, and Olivia sat at the table littered with documents and evidence. The enormity of what had just happened began to sink in. Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. This isn't going to be easy. Mark's influence ran deep, and there are bound to be people loyal to him. People who will resist the changes you're about to make. Jason leaned back in his chair, exhaustion evident in his posture. We have to start somewhere. What's our next step? Olivia placed a folder on the table, her expression serious. We need to conduct a full audit of the resort's finances. There are still a lot of unanswered questions, especially about these offshore accounts. If we're going to rebuild trust, we need complete transparency. Jason nodded, his determination reigniting. Let's get started. The next morning, Jason and Emily held a staff meeting in the main conference room. Nearly every employee attended, their expressions a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Jason stood at the podium, his confidence bolstered by the supportive presence of Olivia and Emily beside him. I owe you all an explanation, Jason began, his voice steady. For the past 6 months, I've been working undercover as a janitor here at Blue Paradise. It was a condition of my father's will, a way for me to truly understand what this resort means and how it operates. Murmurs rippled through the room as employees exchanged surprised glances. During that time, Jason continued, I discovered things that shocked me. Corruption, exploitation, and a betrayal of everything my father stood for. Mark Thompson and his associates were at the center of it, but they weren't the only ones responsible. Now, It's my responsibility to make things right. A voice from the back of the room called out, "Why should we trust you? You're just another Blackwood. How do we know you're any different?" Jason met the challenge head on. "You don't. Not yet. But I'm asking for the chance to prove it to you. I've seen what you all endure every day. The hard work, the sacrifices, the dedication to making this place special. That's what Blue Paradise should be about. And from this moment forward, I promise to fight for you, just as my father would have." The room fell silent as Jason's words sank in. Slowly, a smattering of applause began, growing louder as more employees joined in. It wasn't unanimous, but it was a start. With Olivia leading the financial review, the team uncovered more evidence of the depth of Mark's corruption. Over the years, he had siphoned millions from the resort's profits, using shell companies to hide the transactions. Worse, some of the funds had been funneled to criminal organizations, tying Blue Paradise to dangerous external forces. "This goes deeper than we thought," Olivia said, her brow furrowed as she flipped through spreadsheets. "Mark wasn't just stealing, he was laundering money for people we don't want to cross." Jason felt a chill run down his spine. "Do you think they'll come after us now that Mark's gone?" Emily spoke up, her tone grave. "It's a possibility. These people don't take betrayal lightly. We need to be prepared." Jason decided to bolster security at the resort, hiring professionals to protect both the property and its staff. At the same time, he reached out to local authorities and legal experts to ensure the evidence they had gathered would lead to convictions for Mark and his associates. Meanwhile, Olivia worked tirelessly to rebuild the resort's financial systems, implementing new protocols to prevent future embezzlement. Her attention to detail and unwavering commitment earned her the respect of the remaining staff, many of whom began to see her as a beacon of hope. Amidst the chaos, Jason and Olivia's relationship deepened. Their late-night strategy sessions often turned into heartfelt conversations about their dreams and fears. Jason found solace in Olivia's grounded perspective, while she admired his newfound sense of purpose. One evening, as they walked along the beach after a particularly grueling day, Jason stopped and took Olivia's hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he admitted, his voice filled with sincerity. "You've been my rock through all of this." Olivia smiled, squeezing his hand. "We make a good team, Jason, and we'll get through this together." As the weeks passed, the changes Jason implemented began to take effect. Staff morale improved as employees saw tangible results, better working conditions, fair wages, and a renewed emphasis on the resort's core values. Guests noticed the difference too, praising the warmth and dedication of the staff. For the first time in months, Jason felt a glimmer of hope. Blue Paradise was still far from perfect, but it was on the path to redemption. And Jason knew that as long as he had the support of Olivia, Emily, and the loyal staff, nothing could stop them. The storm had passed, but the wreckage left behind was immense. Blue Paradise Resort was still standing, but its foundation, trust, and integrity had been shaken to the core. For Jason Blackwood, the next phase of his journey was clear: rebuilding not just the resort's reputation, but its very soul. Mark Thompson's arrest sent shockwaves through the resort and the local community. News outlets buzzed with reports of corruption, laundering, and the dramatic police intervention. While some guests were unsettled and chose to leave, others expressed their admiration for Jason's courage in confronting the issue head-on. Inside the resort, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Staff members whispered about the changes ahead, uncertain but cautiously optimistic. Jason knew he had to act quickly to stabilize the situation and rebuild confidence. The day after the arrests, Jason called for another staff meeting. The conference room was packed, with employees from every department eager to hear what he had to say. Standing at the podium, Jason took a deep breath before speaking. "I won't sugarcoat it. We've been through a lot. Trust has been broken, and it's going to take time to heal. But I want you all to know that I'm committed to making this right." He paused, scanning the room. Blue Paradise isn't just a resort. It's a family. And families stick together, even in the toughest times. Together, we'll rebuild this place into something we can all be proud of. The room erupted into applause, a wave of support that bolstered Jason's resolve. It was a small victory, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter. Jason, Olivia, and Emily worked tirelessly to implement sweeping reforms across the resort's operations. These included transparent financial practices. Olivia led the charge, introducing regular audits and clear financial protocols to ensure every dollar was accounted for. Improved staff conditions. Jason raised wages, provided better healthcare benefits, and introduced an employee feedback system to address grievances. Sustainability initiatives. Inspired by his father's vision, Jason launched eco-friendly projects such as solar energy systems and waste reduction programs to make Blue Paradise a leader in sustainable tourism. Community engagement. The resort began hosting local events and partnering with nearby businesses, fostering goodwill and strengthening its ties to the community. The changes were met with mixed reactions at first, but as the weeks went by, the benefits became undeniable. Employees felt valued, guests noticed the improved service, and the resort began earning back its reputation. As Jason poured himself into his work, his relationship with Olivia deepened. The two became an inseparable team, their shared mission bringing them closer together. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Jason and Olivia found themselves alone in the empty dining hall. Jason set down a stack of reports and looked at Olivia with a rare smile. "Do you ever get tired of saving this place?" he asked, his tone light but genuine. Olivia laughed, her eyes sparkling. "Not when I'm doing it with you. Besides, I think we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel." Jason reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I don't know how I'd get through this without you, Olivia. You've been my anchor." She squeezed his hand, her voice soft. "And you've shown me what it means to fight for something bigger than ourselves." Their connection, forged in the fires of adversity, became the foundation of their personal and professional partnership. Despite the progress, challenges continued to arise. Former allies of Mark tried to sow discord among the staff, spreading rumors and questioning Jason's leadership. Guests who had heard of the resort's recent troubles demanded assurances that Blue Paradise was safe and well managed. Jason faced these obstacles head-on, refusing to let doubt creep in. He spent hours talking to employees one-on-one, addressing their concerns and earning their trust. He also personally met with guests, sharing his vision for the resort and ensuring their satisfaction. Emily, ever the mentor, offered Jason sage advice during one particularly difficult week. "Leadership isn't about being perfect," she told him. "It's about showing up, listening, and learning. You're doing all of that, Jason. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Her words resonated deeply with him, giving him the strength to keep pushing forward. One day, Jason received an unexpected visitor, a local journalist who had been covering the resort's story. Instead of looking for more scandals, she offered to write a feature highlighting Blue Paradise's transformation. Jason hesitated at first, wary of the media's scrutiny. But Olivia convinced him it was an opportunity to change the narrative. "People need to see what we're doing here," she said. "This isn't just about damage control. It's about showing the world what Blue Paradise stands for. The article, published a week later, painted a hopeful picture of the resort's rebirth. It featured quotes from staff members, guests, and community leaders, all praising Jason's leadership and the positive changes being made. The piece went viral, attracting new guests and solidifying Blue Paradise's comeback. To celebrate the progress, Jason organized a milestone event, the Blue Paradise Renewal Gala. The gala was a blend of elegance and warmth, with employees, guests, and community members coming together to celebrate the resort's journey. Jason's speech that evening was heartfelt and inspiring. This resort has faced its share of challenges, but we've come out stronger because of the incredible people who make Blue Paradise what it is. Tonight, we celebrate not just our success, but our unity and resilience. The applause was thunderous, and as Jason looked out at the crowd, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Blue Paradise was no longer just his father's dream. It was a testament to the power of perseverance and collective effort. As the night wound down, Jason and Olivia stood on the terrace, watching the waves lap against the shore. The moonlight illuminated their faces, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. "We still have a long way to go," Olivia said, leaning against Jason's shoulder. "I know," he replied, his voice steady. "But for the first time, I feel like we're truly moving in the right direction." Olivia smiled, her confidence in him unwavering. "We're building something amazing, Jason." Together, the morning of the Blue Paradise Renewal Gala dawned with the kind of crisp clarity that hinted at a perfect day. Sunlight filtered through the lush palms surrounding the resort, glistening on the crystal-clear waters and casting a golden glow across the meticulously prepared event spaces. It wasn't just a day to celebrate the resort's rebirth. It was a day to reclaim its soul. Jason Blackwood, standing on the balcony of his suite, watched the bustling activity below. Staff members moved with purpose, setting up tables adorned with fresh flowers and linen, while the gentle hum of music rehearsals floated through the air. It was a symphony of effort, a testament to the unity he had fought so hard to build. Planning the gala had been a collaborative effort, with contributions from every department. Olivia's keen eye ensured the finances stayed within budget while maximizing the event's elegance. Emily had coordinated with local businesses, securing partnerships that provided everything from catering to entertainment. The theme, "A Vision Reborn," was visible in every detail. The main lawn was transformed into a stunning open-air venue, with twinkling lights strung between towering palms and pathways lined with lanterns. The resort's iconic infinity pool served as the centerpiece, surrounded by tables where guests would dine under the stars. Jason, donning a tailored navy suit, felt a mix of nerves and pride. Tonight wasn't just about the resort's renewal. It was about honoring his father's legacy and proving that Blue Paradise was a place where integrity thrived. As evening fell, the first guests began to arrive. Local community leaders, loyal patrons, and even a few influential figures from the tourism industry were greeted with warm smiles and glasses of champagne. The staff, wearing their finest uniforms, moved gracefully through the crowd, embodying the spirit of hospitality that defined Blue Paradise. Jason stationed himself near the entrance, personally welcoming each guest. His handshake was firm, his gratitude genuine. When he spotted familiar faces among the attendees, longtime staff members, former guests who had returned despite the recent turmoil, his confidence grew. Olivia, radiant in an emerald green dress, joined Jason to greet guests. Her presence beside him was both reassuring and grounding. Together, they represented the heart and mind of the resort, a partnership forged through trust and shared purpose. The gala began with a cocktail hour, where guests mingled against the backdrop of a breathtaking sunset. A live band played soft jazz, creating an atmosphere of sophistication and warmth. Jason moved through the crowd, engaging in conversations and expressing his appreciation for the support Blue Paradise had received. When dinner was served, the guests were treated to a menu that showcased the best of local cuisine, prepared with a focus on sustainability, a nod to Jason's commitment to ethical practices. Each dish was a masterpiece, and the delighted reactions of the diners were a testament to the skill and dedication of the resort's culinary team. As dessert was served, Jason stepped onto the small stage near the pool. The murmurs of conversation quieted, and all eyes turned to him. Taking a deep breath, he began. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight, for standing with us during one of the most challenging times in Blue Paradise's history." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the audience. This resort was my father's dream. He saw not just the beauty of this place, but its potential to bring people together, to create moments of joy and connection. But dreams, no matter how beautiful, require hard work and integrity to sustain. Jason's voice grew more resolute. "When I first arrived here, I thought I was coming to learn about business. What I've truly learned is the importance of people, our staff, our guests, and our community. You are the heart of Blue Paradise, and it's because of you that this place has survived and thrived." He held up a glass of champagne. "Tonight, we celebrate not just a resort, but a vision reborn. To my father's legacy, to the future, and to all of you, thank you." The applause that followed was thunderous. Jason felt a wave of emotion wash over him, a mix of pride, gratitude, and determination. As the evening continued, Jason took a moment to himself, retreating to a quieter corner of the venue. The night had been a resounding success, but the weight of the journey lingered in his mind. Olivia found him there, her expression soft as she approached. "You were incredible up there," she said, her voice filled with admiration. Jason turned to her, his gratitude evident. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Olivia. You've been my partner in every way." She smiled, stepping closer. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the guests laugh and dance under the twinkling lights. Jason felt a profound sense of peace, a rare and precious moment amid the chaos of recent months. Later in the evening, Jason took the stage again, this time joined by Emily and Olivia. Together, they called up representatives from each department, honoring their contributions and presenting small tokens of appreciation. One by one, the staff members were recognized: housekeepers, chefs, maintenance workers, and more. Each person received heartfelt applause, a reminder of the collective effort that had made the gala and the resort's renewal possible. As the clock neared midnight, the guests gathered around the infinity pool for a final toast. Fireworks lit up the sky, their reflection dancing on the water below. Cheers erupted, and the air buzzed with hope and excitement. Jason and Olivia stood side by side, their hands intertwined. Emily joined them, her smile radiant as she looked at the celebration. "Your father would be so proud," she said softly. Jason nodded, his voice steady. "We've come a long way, but this is just the beginning." As the fireworks faded and the guests began to depart, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. Blue Paradise was more than a resort. It was a living legacy, a testament to resilience, and a promise of a brighter future. The morning after the gala dawned, with the kind of quiet serenity that only followed a triumphant night. The sun rose gently over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the Blue Paradise Resort. Its tranquil beauty mirrored the sense of hope and renewal that had taken root among the staff, guests, and local community. Jason Blackwood, standing on the balcony of his suite, watched the resort below, a mixture of pride and anticipation swelling in his chest. The gala had been an overwhelming success, a declaration to the world that Blue Paradise was not just surviving, but thriving. Yet, as much as Jason basked in the glow of the resort's triumph, his thoughts drifted to Olivia Thompson. She had become more than a partner in this endeavor. She was the anchor that had steadied him through the storm. And tonight, Jason planned to take the next step in their journey together. Jason began his day with a series of meetings, reviewing feedback from the gala and discussing next steps with the management team. Emily Rodriguez, as always, provided invaluable insights, her sharp eye for detail, ensuring no stone was left unturned. "Jason," Emily said, handing him a folder of guest feedback forms. "Last night was a turning point for the resort. But remember, sustaining this momentum will require constant effort." Jason nodded, her words echoing the lessons he had learned over the past months. "I won't let my father's vision slip, Emily. This is just the beginning." As they wrapped up their discussion, Emily gave him a knowing smile. "By the way, I saw the way you and Olivia looked at each other last night. Have you told her yet?" Jason hesitated, then smiled. "Not yet. But tonight, I plan to." Emily's eyes sparkled. "It's about time. She's been your rock, Jason. She deserves to know how much she means to you." Throughout the day, Jason meticulously planned every detail of the evening. He wanted the proposal to reflect not only his feelings for Olivia, but also the journey they had shared. With the help of a few trusted staff members, he transformed a secluded cove near the resort into a magical setting. Twinkling lights were strung between the palms, and a small table was set up with candles and their favorite dishes. As the sun began to set, Jason stood in front of his mirror, adjusting his tie. His reflection revealed a man transformed, no longer the aimless playboy who had arrived months ago, but a leader, a partner, and someone ready to embrace the future. Olivia arrived at the cove, just as the last rays of sunlight kissed the horizon. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair cascading in soft waves. Her expression shifted from curiosity to awe as she took in the setting. "Jason," she whispered, her voice tinged with wonder, "what is all this?" Jason stepped forward, his hands gently taking hers. "Olivia, this is for us, for everything we've built together." They sat down to a quiet dinner, their conversation flowing as effortlessly as always. But as the night deepened and the stars emerged, Jason knew it was time. He stood and extended a hand to Olivia, guiding her to a spot where the ocean waves lapped softly against the shore. Taking a deep breath, Jason lowered himself onto one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Olivia Thompson's," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "These past months have been the most challenging and transformative of my life. And through it all, you've been my partner, my confidant, and my greatest source of strength." He opened the box to reveal a delicate diamond ring, the light catching its facets and sending sparks of brilliance into the night. "I can't imagine facing the future without you by my side. Will you marry me? Will you be my partner in life, in love, and in building a future for Blue Paradise?" Tears glistened in Olivia's eyes as she smiled, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Jason. 1,000 times yes." Jason slid the ring onto her finger, standing to pull her into a tight embrace. They stood there for a moment, lost in each other, as the waves sang their eternal song. The news of their engagement spread quickly among the staff, who had become a second family to Jason and Olivia. The next morning, the resort was abuzz with excitement and well wishes. Emily, ever the practical yet sentimental mentor, pulled Olivia aside. "I always knew you two were meant for each other," she said warmly. "Now, don't let him slack off just because he's the boss." Olivia laughed. "Oh, don't worry. I'll keep him in line." Jason, meanwhile, found himself surrounded by staff members, offering congratulations. From the kitchen crew to the housekeepers, everyone seemed genuinely happy for the couple. With their engagement solidifying their partnership, Jason and Olivia began discussing their shared vision for Blue Paradise's future. They wanted the resort, though, to be not only a luxury destination, but also a model of sustainability and community involvement. "We can create programs to train local youth in hospitality," Olivia suggested during one of their planning sessions. "It would not only benefit the community, but also build a strong foundation for the resort's future." Jason nodded, inspired by her ideas. "And we can partner with local businesses to source more of our products." It's time Blue Paradise became a true beacon of ethical tourism. As the days turned into weeks, Jason and Olivia's bond grew even stronger. They worked tirelessly to implement their plans, ensuring that Blue Paradise remained a place of beauty, integrity, and opportunity. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony of their suite, Jason wrapped an arm around Olivia's waist. Below them, the resort buzzed with activity, a living, thriving testament to their efforts. "You know," Jason said softly, "when I first came here, I thought I was being punished. But now, I see that this was the greatest gift my father could have given me." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, her smile reflecting her own contentment. "He saw your potential, Jason, and he was right. You've become the man he always knew you could be." Jason kissed her temple, a profound sense of peace settling over him. Together, they had overcome challenges, unraveled mysteries, and built a future that honored William Blackwood's dream. And now, they were ready to face whatever came next, side by side. The honeymoon phase of Jason and Olivia's engagement was short-lived, as the responsibilities of leadership at Blue Paradise Resort quickly demanded their full attention. The couple, though deeply in love and motivated, now faced the daunting task of translating their vision into sustainable and actionable practices. The resort, while thriving in the aftermath of its rebirth, had yet to address many long-standing challenges that had been overshadowed by more pressing crises. One morning, Jason and Olivia convened in the resort's executive meeting room with Emily Rodriguez and key department heads. The group had gathered to discuss the next phase of improvements for Blue Paradise. The table was strewn with charts, financial reports, and proposal drafts, all evidence of the hard work that lay ahead. "We've done an incredible job revitalizing the resort," Jason began, addressing the room with the confidence of a seasoned leader. "But now it's time to focus on long-term sustainability and community involvement. We want Blue Paradise to be a model for ethical tourism." Olivia added, "This isn't just about profits. It's about creating a place where employees, guests, and the local community all benefit. We need to invest in our people and the environment." The staff exchanged cautious but intrigued looks. Mark's regime had left a shadow of mistrust, but Jason and Olivia's transparency and dedication were slowly winning them over. Over the next weeks, Jason and Olivia spearheaded several initiatives aimed at transforming the resort. Community training programs. Olivia developed a hospitality training program for local youth, partnering with nearby schools and vocational centers. The program provided internships and potential job placements at Blue Paradise, empowering the community and fostering a sense of shared ownership in the resort's success. Sustainability efforts. Jason pushed for a complete overhaul of the resort's operations, To prioritize eco-friendly practices, solar panels were installed, water conservation systems implemented, and single-use plastics phased out. They also began sourcing food and materials from local vendors, boosting the regional economy. Staff empowerment. Emily worked closely with department heads to establish an employee feedback system, ensuring staff had a voice in decision-making. Regular town hall meetings became a platform for open communication, further building trust. Despite their enthusiasm, not everything went smoothly. Resistance from some longtime employees, wary of change, created friction. Financial strain from the initial investment in sustainable technologies led to tense budget meetings. Even some guests voiced complaints about the removal of certain luxury items in favor of eco-friendly alternatives. During one particularly heated meeting, Robert Davis, the head accountant, voiced concerns. "Jason, these changes are admirable, but they're expensive. If we don't manage our cash flow carefully, we could face serious financial trouble." Jason, though feeling the pressure, remained resolute. "I understand, Robert, but these investments are necessary. Short-term challenges are inevitable, but the long-term benefits will outweigh them." The strain of leadership also tested Jason and Olivia's relationship. Late nights in the office and constant problem-solving left little time for romance. A particularly heated argument erupted when Olivia suggested scaling back some initiatives to ease the financial burden. "We can't keep stretching ourselves so thin, Jason," Olivia said, frustration evident in her voice. "We need to prioritize." "And what do you suggest we cut?" Jason countered, his tone sharper than he intended. "The community programs, the sustainability efforts, those are the foundation of our vision." The room fell silent as they stared at each other, both realizing they were letting their stress get the better of them. After a moment, Olivia sighed. "I'm not saying we abandon our vision. I just think we need to be strategic about how we implement it." Jason softened, reaching for her hand. "You're right. I'm sorry, I want to make this work for everyone." Olivia squeezed his hand. "And we will. Together." As the months passed, the fruits of their labor began to show. The hospitality training program graduated its first cohort, with many participants securing positions at the resort. Guests praised the eco-friendly initiatives, with several mentioning how the changes enhanced their experience rather than detracted from it. One evening during a staff town hall, a housekeeper named Maria stood up to speak. "I've been here for over 20 years, she began, her voice steady but emotional. "I've seen this resort through its ups and downs, but for the first time, I feel like my voice matters. Thank you, Jason and Olivia, for listening to us." The room erupted in applause, and Jason felt a lump form in his throat. It was moments like these that reminded him why they were working so hard. Emily continued to play a pivotal role, offering sage advice and acting as a sounding board for Jason and Olivia. One afternoon, as they reviewed plans for a new wellness center, Emily leaned back in her chair and smiled. "You know," she said, "William would be proud of what you've accomplished. He always believed in the power of perseverance and the importance of doing what's right, even when it's hard." Jason felt a pang of emotion, but managed to smile. "I just hope I'm living up to his expectations." "You're not just living up to them," Emily replied. "You're exceeding them." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the skies over the Florida Keys in hues of amber and violet. Blue Paradise Resort had never looked more radiant. The soft glow of lanterns illuminated the grounds, casting a serene and almost magical light over the property. Tonight, the resort was hosting a special event, a celebration marking not just another successful year, but the culmination of an extraordinary transformation. Jason Blackwood stood on the balcony of the main villa, watching the guests mingle below. He could hear the faint sounds of laughter and clinking glasses, the symphony of a vibrant community coming together. Beside him, Olivia appeared, her presence as radiant as the evening itself. She gently placed her hand on his shoulder, and he turned to face her. "Ready for your speech?" Olivia asked, a playful smile on her lips. Jason chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I've given dozens of speeches in the past year, but this one feels different. It's not just about the resort. It's about everything we've built together." Olivia leaned closer. "You'll do great. Just speak from the heart. That's what they're here for." As Jason descended the staircase and made his way to the podium, his mind replayed the past few years. From his father's unexpected death to the 6 months he spent disguised as a janitor, every moment had shaped him into the man he was today. He remembered the struggles, the late nights of grueling work, the tension of uncovering corruption, and the fear of exposing his true identity. But alongside the challenges were moments of triumph, the camaraderie of the staff, the trust he earned, and the love he found in Olivia. Reaching the podium, Jason paused, scanning the crowd. Familiar faces filled the audience. Emily, the steadfast mentor. Maria, the housekeeper who had spoken so candidly at a staff meeting. Robert, now confident in his role as the resort's head accountant. And countless others whose dedication had brought Blue Paradise to life. "Good evening, everyone," Jason began, his voice steady and warm. "Tonight, we celebrate more than just the success of Blue Paradise. We celebrate the people who made it possible." Jason spoke of the resort's transformation, highlighting the milestones they had achieved together. He praised the staff for their hard work and resilience, sharing anecdotes that brought laughter and nods of recognition. He honored his father's memory, acknowledging the vision that had inspired it all. "When my father built this resort, he dreamed of a place that wasn't just beautiful, but meaningful," Jason said. "He wanted Blue Paradise to be a sanctuary, a place where people could find joy, connection, and purpose. And thanks to all of you, that dream is alive and thriving." As he spoke, Jason caught Olivia's eye. Her encouragement had been his anchor, and he felt a surge of gratitude for her unwavering support. Jason continued, sharing the lessons he had learned during his journey. "There was a time when I saw this place as just an inheritance, a responsibility I wasn't sure I wanted. But when I worked alongside you, I realized something far more profound. Blue Paradise isn't just a resort, it's a family. And being part of this family has been the greatest privilege of my life." The crowd erupted into applause, and Jason stepped back, allowing Olivia to join him on stage. Together, they unveiled a commemorative plaque dedicated to William Blackwood, a tribute to the man whose dream had brought them all together. As the celebration continued, Jason and Olivia mingled with guests and staff. They listened to stories of how the resort had impacted lives, how it had provided opportunities, fostered friendships, and created memories. Each story reinforced their commitment to building a legacy that honored William's vision while forging a new path forward. Later that evening, Jason and Olivia stole away to a quiet spot on the beach. The stars sparkled above, their reflection shimmering on the gentle waves. Jason watched as Olivia knelt in the sand, helping their 2-year-old daughter build a sandcastle. Their son, slightly older, was busy collecting seashells nearby. "Daddy, look," the boy called out, holding up a particularly colorful shell. Jason smiled, walking over to his son. "That's a great find, buddy. Maybe we should add it to your sister's castle." As the family worked together on their creation, Jason felt a profound sense of peace. This was the life he had always wanted, but never known he needed. A life filled with purpose, love, and connection. As the night wore on, Jason and Olivia sat together on the same spot where Jason had often reflected on his father's legacy. The gentle sound of the waves and the laughter of their children provided a soothing backdrop. "Do you think he'd be proud?" Jason asked softly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Olivia didn't hesitate. "I know he would. You've turned his dream into something even greater. Blue Paradise isn't just his legacy anymore. It's ours." Jason took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I couldn't have done it without you." "And I wouldn't want to do it without you," Olivia replied, her voice filled with love. The years that followed saw Blue Paradise flourish. Jason and Olivia's leadership transformed the resort into a global model for ethical and sustainable tourism. It became a place where guests came not just for luxury, but for the sense of belonging and purpose it offered. Jason's journey, from a reluctant heir to a visionary leader, inspired those around him. His story became a testament to the power of resilience, love, and integrity. A reminder that even in the face of adversity, it's possible to create something beautiful. And so, under the starlit sky of the Florida Keys, Blue Paradise stood as a beacon of hope, a paradise not just in name, but in spirit. Jason and Olivia's legacy was secure, their family's future bright, and their hearts full. The dream William Blackwood had envisioned lived on, stronger and more vibrant than ever. As the waves of this story settle, I'd love to hear from you. What moment from Jason's journey moved you the most? Was it his transformation, his love story with Olivia, or the fight to protect his father's legacy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm reading every single one. If this story inspired you, there's so much more to come. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next incredible tale of resilience, love, and the human spirit. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Your support keeps these stories alive, and I can't wait to take you on the next adventure. See you soon. Om Som Om.